Citizens of the universe, it is time for Neutral Lens Podcast, episode 3. Another week is in the rearview mirror, and we have quite a bit to discuss, so let's get into it. And if you're unfamiliar with what we do here, we kind of just talk about anything and everything that comes up and just try and approach it objectively, have a different perspective than most people would, and see where that leads us. So, this first topic, or rather question, is there is this guy. He is 26 years old. His girlfriend is about the same age. They've been dating for roughly 2 years now at this point. But for the last 3 months, he has seen her behavior become somewhat suspicious. Like, she's a little bit jittery. She's kind of hiding stuff from him. Maybe won't let him see everything. She's not as open as she used to be. And, just in general, isn't always open about telling him where she is and things like that. So he went out to kind of see what she's getting up to, and he found her with another man. And they were out eating dinner, and he confronted her with the evidence. She denied it, said it wasn't anything serious. It wasn't a relationship. They had a big fight about it, and then she admitted, yes, it was me going on a date with another man. And she says she's very sorry. She won't do it again, and really wants him to stay with her, and really wants that relationship to work. And what should he do? Should he leave her? Should he stay with her? What should he do? So first things first, before we talk about what you should do, you need to have a conversation about why she is cheating. Because a lot of people have some sort of reason, generally along the lines of, like, I'm not happy with this relationship, whether it be they're not getting the emotional affection that they want, they're not getting the sexual whatever that they want from a relationship. Maybe you guys just have a personality clash, like she's very upbeat, wants to go to parties, and you're more zen and chill, and you don't really like parties. So you just have to find what it is if you care. Like, right, if you want the relationship to continue, then this is a conversation that you need to have in order for it to continue, in my opinion. If you don't care at all, you just want to break up with her, well, then, like, fine, but I assume that you haven't made up your mind. So, but yeah, you need to talk to her and really have a long sit-down conversation. What is the problem? Like, have you guys had any problems that you already know of? Have you talked about them before? Do you know any of the reasons that maybe she would want to look elsewhere? Think about that. Talk to her about it. If you haven't talked about it already, then maybe that's a little bit of a red flag, in the sense that, like, she's not even willing to communicate about it. Sometimes people are just afraid to have that difficult conversation. Now, that's totally understandable. But, could be a sign that maybe she is not fully committed to you. But also, like, if you're trying to have this conversation and she's not opening up about it, she's trying to, brush it under the rug, so to speak, then it could also be a sign that she's not trustworthy. She's not really willing to commit to this relationship. She's just using it as, maybe she is getting some stuff that she wants out of it, but there's other stuff she wants too. Like, maybe she likes your money. I don't know what it is. I don't know your situation, but maybe she likes your money. Maybe she likes the emotional comfort that you provide her, but maybe there's not enough sexual pleasure in the relationship, or something along those lines, to where she feels like she has to fulfill those desires elsewhere, right? And if she's not opening up about any of these, problems, not communicating about it, even after you try and have a conversation, then that's a little bit of a red flag. And I wouldn't trust someone like that, especially since she's already cheated once. Then if she says she's not going to, I don't believe her at all. But yeah, you need to have this conversation with her. It's going to be a long and hard one, but I think cheating is the biggest breach of trust that you can have. I mean, in a relationship for sure, but, like, maybe even in general, other than, like, I don't know, death. But yeah, I honestly would never forgive cheating. It is, like, one of those things where if you cheat on your partner in a relationship, it is over. It is done. Because they're likely going to do it again. They might not do it again, but they've breached that trust, and it's never going to feel the same. You're always going to have it in the back of your mind. You're going to have some paranoia around it. You're going to have some sort of mistrust and harbor some resentment, or, like, other negative feelings and thoughts towards her and the situation that happened. And That's not good in a relationship. You need to have full trust in each other, and you're never going to have that again. It's going to change the dynamic forever. And unless you are really willing to live with that, I'm not willing to live with that. I don't think you should. So at that point, even if you had a great relationship, you really love her, it might just be time to leave, because it's just not going to be the same after that. Like it's hard. It's difficult, but that is one of those situations where I would walk away and I would say, look, you may be telling the truth that you really want this to work out, but you've already betrayed my trust once, and I can't have that happen again, so I'm sorry. And that'll be it. Another thing I want to talk about, though, is I think some people might see her kind of initially denying this accusation as a bad thing, where like, oh, why were you not honest? Why were you denying that you were cheating on him? But I honestly, like, I feel like most people in that situation, they would sort of do the same thing. Being defensive like that initially is not necessarily like a terrible thing, It's not saying, oh, she's a terrible person. Most people are dishonest about a lot of things, I think, and it's trying to save face. It's trying to kind of protect yourself in a way, because she does feel ashamed about it. I'm sure she does. Most people, when they do cheat, they feel ashamed about it. That they know it's wrong, and it's sort of like trying to deny it to yourself in a way. I don't see it as a thing where she's just trying to, keep him off the trail in like a terrible way. More like she just got caught and she's like, oh crap, oh no, it's one of those situations. But yeah, difficult situation to be in for sure. I personally would say that I would never forgive cheating, and probably a good idea to leave. If you can handle the dynamic shift, if you feel like it's not going to bother you too much, it's not going to bother her too much, then you could give it another shot. But I'm telling you, if it happens again, there's no third time. All right, moving on. This one is a little bit of a topic shift. Why are remakes or sequels less successful than the original? So this one has a myriad of reasons. I think it comes down to a lot of things, but in short, money grab. Studios want money, so hey, this was popular. Why don't we make part 2? People are going to watch it, no matter how bad it is. It happens. That is a legitimate thing. But other than that, it really comes down to story. Like most of these original movies that got really popular, they're not meant to have a sequel, right? Like, the story ended. It's not like Star Wars, where the first movie can be on its own, but there's a clear follow-up path for The Empire Strikes Back, and then The Empire Strikes Back kind of leaves on a little bit of a cliffhanger, like there is going to be a third movie, and that's going to be when the story finishes. Same thing with like episodes 1 and 2, like there's a clear story, it's not finished yet. So, but let's continue with Star Wars, for example. Like, the story ended after episode 6, right? And everything is done. They live happily ever after, whatever. And then they create episodes 7 through 9, which is basically just Disney money grab, because they weren't meant to exist. There are a ton of plot holes with whatever they did in those movies to try and make it more intriguing, try and make it feel more familiar. Because if it doesn't feel familiar, it doesn't feel like Star Wars. And at that point, they're basically making a whole different movie, and it's gonna piss people off. But there was never meant to be an episode 7 when the story was originally wrote. So in trying to draw new storylines and draw new plots from a movie and a story that's already concluded, and try and drag it out, you just end up creating a whole mess, and it turns the movie into some crap. And this isn't even for movies only. Like, I was a pro wrestling fan for a while, and one of the biggest mistakes that they make in their script writing in terms of making the storylines for the wrestlers is sometimes they have this 6-month-long feud. It comes to a head, and then they want to extend it to try and keep generating revenue, because they realized it was such a hot story and everyone was invested in it, but it's already ended. So when you try and drag it out, you try and make it keep going, then it just feels like a slog. So that's when they started to lose interest and they started to lose momentum. And the finale was like, okay, it should have ended 2 months ago, things like that. But going back to movies, it could also be like a thing where maybe not all the directors, producers, writers, whatever, animators, if it's an animation, are the same, and different people behind the scenes can cause a dramatically different vibe. And sometimes that one movie just captures some sort of magic with it, and you're unable to replicate it because it's a completely different vibe. You have different people, you are trying to do something different, which is like draw from a story rather than just coming up with it and making everything work. But you have to try and make everything work within a set structure and frame, and that's a lot more difficult, and generally it doesn't happen. Like, the only sequel that I can think of that was actually good was Kung Fu Panda 2. But the reason it was good was because Kung Fu Panda started with a lot of question marks when it came to Po's background and his origin, because he's not the son of a goose. Like, who's going to believe that? They didn't try to make a sequel. Like, when they made a sequel to it in Kung Fu Panda 3, that was, you know, that's when you were like, okay, what the hell is this? But Kung Fu Panda 2, although it didn't take place beforehand because it was a sequel, it sort of allowed Po to discover his origins and have that story of how did he come to where he is today. And I think that is the reason why that one was a lot more successful of a sequel than the other ones could have been, because it was really more about an origin that was left very questioned in the first movie. So yeah, and like, I think the most obvious reason, of course, is laziness. Studios, they put a lot of money into just marketing it and trying to generate more revenue out of it, like milking the franchise or the series or whatever it is as long as they can. And they know that it only needs to be good enough rather than actually good. They know it doesn't need to have some sort of insane magic, because people are going to watch it anyway. They already watched the first one. If you make a 2, 3, 4, and 5, people are going to watch it anyway, hoping that you do something good with it, because they know how good number 1 was. They know the potential is there, but you can never quite get the same magic, so it's never going to be the same. And I don't even necessarily blame like the writers or people working on it, because they are put in somewhat of a difficult task of trying to follow up something that had so much magic, that had so much love and adoration with it, usually, and to follow that up with a story that is going on top of one that's already concluded, it can be incredibly difficult. Like, the studio put them in this spot, it's hard. So yeah. Anyway, last topic. Is college important? Well, it depends on your career goal. Like, I think you don't need a college degree for a lot of jobs nowadays, but it will still look good on a resume. And I think it really comes down to, first of all, if your job doesn't really need, like, if you're just going to start your own business, then maybe you don't need to go to college at all. Some jobs, they require degrees. Some jobs you kind of need to get professional training to even be able to get into it. Then that's when college is more necessary. But yeah, it really depends on what you want to be doing. If the thing that you want to be doing, you need to get a degree for it, then yes. If you kind of don't need a degree, then maybe not worth it, especially nowadays with more and more people realizing that, like, YouTube University or just self-taught in general, like, you can do a lot of things without a degree. You don't need it at all. It's not a sign of qualification at this point, because honestly, college doesn't teach you a lot when it comes to what you need to know. I think what college is really important for is about teaching yourself and giving you a proper foundation with professional training, in the sense that, like, a lot of people can go on YouTube, look up tutorials for how to do things, whether it be like coding or, engineering, and they can get some ideas and they can get some knowledge points, but you don't really learn super fundamentally, because honestly, a lot of YouTube University, especially nowadays, now that it's so saturated, it becomes, how can I clickbait? How can I get views? How can I get money off of it, rather than actually trying to put stuff out there to teach. And what you get in a college is you get a professional setting with someone who kind of knows what they're doing at the very least. and they will show you the fundamental steps to get going in what it is that you want to do. And they're going to set you on the right path rather than leaving you out there, throwing you to the wolves, and you don't really know what's going on, and you can make a lot of wrong turns. It can be a lot harder for you to get to where you need to be. You're gonna have to jump through a lot more hoops than if you just learned it properly in the first place. So I think that's one big thing. And the other thing is like teaching yourself, right? So college is going to give you a foundation. How are you going to use that to learn from it and get more advanced in terms of your knowledge, in terms of your techniques, whatever it may be? I really think that in college, the biggest skill you need to develop is teachers are only, or like professors, they're only going to give you guidelines. They're there to guide you, but you're really there to get hands-on, learn about it, do the work yourself. And because after those 4 years, nobody's going to be teaching you anymore. So the way you learn is you have to teach yourself. And if you can learn how to effectively do that in college while someone is guiding you, that's going to make it a lot easier in the future for you to sit down and learn new things, because every industry is constantly evolving, constantly adapting. So you're going to need to do the same if you want to keep up. And that's just something to keep in mind. Like there's a reason people still look for college degrees. It's not necessarily because, oh, well, he got a degree and he really knows what he's doing. No, I don't think a lot of people know what they're doing just because they have a degree. You hear about C's get degrees. A lot of people, they forget half of it already by the time they graduate. It doesn't really mean anything in terms of your actual skills, but it can mean that you have a better foundation and that you have a better sense of how to teach yourself moving forward so that you can actually maybe learn quicker than somebody who hasn't been there. Of course, this could all be completely false depending on who it is, but in general, that is something that could happen. So, yeah. All right, that'll do it for episode 3. Thank you for listening. If you have questions you want answered, topics you want discussed, Neutral Lens Pod on all social medias, you can just send me a message and I'll get to you in a future episode. See you guys next week.